Hey everybody. Now we're moving into some rhythm things. I'm calling this kind of the intermediate rhythm, just as sort of review. So we've talked about, half notes, whole notes, quarter rest, quarter notes, things like that. So I want to get into what is called the subdivision of the beat, um, or subpulse, things like that. So we're going to get into shorter notes here. So these notes, there can be more of them in a measure, but they're much faster in duration. So we're going to start out with the simple idea of eighth notes and 16th notes today. So let's just dive right in. So eighth notes is the first subdivision of the beat. And when we're in 4/4 time, because there are two eighth notes per pulse in 4/4 time, each pulse gets two eighth notes. So, of course, you have eight eighth notes in a beat, right? The first eighth note in this example here of each pair is the downbeat, is the number, right? So the first note of each pairing, eighth note pair, is the beat. So this would be 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. Now, what we're going to call the upbeat, the subdivision, is the and, or we're just going to mark that with a plus sign. So each of these is going to be and. It's the same thing. Now, this is a counting system that we use. There are other good counting systems out there, and there are not as great counting systems out there, but this is the one that we use. So this measure would go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and right there toward the end, I realized that I was a little too staccato in my counting. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so nice, and they're still got to be kind of within. You don't make them staccato on accident. That sort of thing's on purpose. Okay, so the next one I have, actually, let's move right into the rhythm tree then. So in some of the other videos, I had this rhythm tree worked out where we started out with the whole note, and the whole note was divided out into two half notes, which then equaled 2 quarter notes per half note, so 4 total quarter notes in our rhythm tree. And now we can add to that our eighth notes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the eighth note pair like we were just doing. That's an eighth note pair. Single eighth notes look like this. You got the stem, of course, and then you have a flag that comes down. When it goes across, it's called a beam. When it comes down, it's called a flag. So we can do that. That's another eighth note. I'm going to beam this one here so you can see the beam. And then these two I'll flag. So those are all the same thing. I want you to see that this eighth note right here is the same exact duration as that eighth note. This pairing, it sounds exactly the same as this pairing, but this is a single eighth note. These are single eighth notes, and these are just so happen to be paired together. Just helps it visually a little bit when you do it like that, if you're able. Okay, so the next thing are, let me get my paper squared away here, the 16th notes. So now we're in the next subdivision of the beat. So you can see here that I've grouped them in 4s, and there are 16 notes in the measure. So there are 16 16th notes in a measure. So these notes are going to move really fast. These are really, really fast notes. And at the beginning of the year, I actually start by teaching 16th notes. We start with 16th notes and then we slow it down, which I really like to do. But right now, I think this is a really good situation for a review. So with 16th notes, every pairing starts with the beat. Sorry, not pairing, but every group. So there's your 1 right there on the document. Your 2 starts here. Your 3 starts there. And your 4 starts there. Okay, so those are now our beats. So now you can see you've got 3 notes still after you initiate each beat, where up here you only had one after each beat. Now here's the tricky thing. Before you start counting this like crazy, a lot of people are going to think that's the and. That is not the and. The second note is not the and. If you were to even these out, and I could have lined these up really well for you, but I just didn't have that opportunity. The ands have to come evenly. So when you place, when you're like comparing beats 1 and 2, the and would lie exactly between beats 1 and 2. So if you put it there, you still got two 16th notes before you get to 2. So let's try to find where would it evenly be. So if we put it there, let's say we put the and there, well now the and goes right before 2, and there are 2 notes before the and. So the and actually goes right here. So there's a 16th note, and then an and then another 16th note. So that and is equally between the 1 and the 2. Okay? So we can go ahead, and the third 16th note of every set is and. There's an and there. There's an and there. And there is an and there. Okay? So those are your ands. Now these here, the ones on either side of the and for each set, we have to give a name. So the one right before the and is an E. So right before that, now you can plug in each of these. 1 E and, then we've got 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. Sorry, sometimes my E's look like C's, but you get what I'm saying. So this is E, 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 E. So 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. The last one we also have to name, which we're going to name 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and So this measure would sound like this: 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and And of course, we go all the way to the beat of the next measure, or the beat 1 of the next measure. So that is how those are all divided up. And now you can do some fancy things with these by getting rid of some eighth notes and making it a quarter note instead, kind of thing. But I want to focus on the simple 16th note sets. Biggest difference you can see is that 16th notes are double beamed, where eighth notes are single beamed. Word to the wise. If you see this in music or in our like ISMA sight reading stuff, those are eighth notes. 1 and 2 and. But we'll get to that later. Sorry, that's not the prettiest thing ever. So now we can then take our rhythm tree again. I don't want to spend, I'm trying to keep everything within like 10 minutes. Some things it's not going to be possible, but this can be. So I'm going to take my rhythm tree and divide each eighth note into its own 16th note set. So again, not the prettiest, and I apologize, but that's okay. So that is what a 16th note looks like. So you can divide, each eighth note is divided into two 16th notes, or eighth note pair is divided into a 16th note set, okay? Because these are kind of small, I'm not going to get it, well, over here. Let's do this one as well. So these are all 16th note pairs. And this last one here, I'm going to show you what the flag looks like. It's not the prettiest, but let me actually draw it over here in a second. So it is a single 16th note has 2 flags, where the single eighth note had 1 flag, 1 flag or 1 beam, 2 flags or 2 beams. So if I was to enlarge the 16th note, it would look like that. That's a single 16th note. Okay. So let's, as we finish out here, let's just count this example. Just a quick 1 measure example, y'all. Okay, all it is, as I'm just quickly looking at it, the first thing I need to see is the time signature, 4/4 time, good old buddy 4/4 time. the four pulses in a measure, and the pulse note is a quarter note or a 4 note. Okay, so we've got 16th notes. So we start every measure, whether it's sound or silent, starts with 1. Okay, we go back to our initial thing here, and I can see eighth note set is a completely up and down as a 1, E, and So now we go to this eighth note pairing, and we know we've completely gone through beat 1 here. So of course, then we start with beat 2, and we're in the subdivision of the beat. So this is 2 and. Then we've gone through completely through beat 2 here, and we go into beat 3. So then we just kind of use our pre-knowledge of how 16th notes are counted. And we go 1 E and a here. Okay, but it's the same thing, but on 3. 3 E and then we close it out with what we know of our eighth notes, which is, so we start with 4 there, of course, and then and. So this measure would sound 1 E and a 2 and 3 E and a 4 and that's it.